a person is, in terms of the relational aspect, is masculine and they're unhealthy in that expression, in terms of how they argue or how they aggress in the world, they will be more loud, they'll be more overt, they'll scream, they'll shout, they'll be very direct and very abusive and very insulting as well. Whereas the feminine aggression is more, again, passive, manipulative, underground per se. It's not very overt, it's more covert. But essentially it comes from the same place, and that is unchecked wounding, unchecked pain and fear.
Hey you guys, it's Sheila Bella, and you are listening to Stefanos Sifandos. What he just said really blew my mind. That's why I wanted to start with that. It all comes from the same place. All of our ugliness, whether masculine or feminine, when we act crazy, when we act aggressively, whether passive or not, it is the symptom of unchecked pain and fear. I have a really good one for you guys today. Today we're talking to Stefanos Sifandos and how the role of the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine in contemporary times play together, and how the role of men these days, what part they play, what is the role they play in the world of female entrepreneurship. Stick around, you don't want to miss this. Welcome to the Pretty Rich podcast, where every woman is the heroine of her own story. I'm your host, Sheila Bella, and I built $1 million beauty business from nothing. So maybe if you listen enough, you'll start to believe that you can do it too. Because if the perfect job doesn't exist, well, you can create it. If the job you want isn't hiring you, you can unapologetically hire yourself. Each episode will equip you with empowering conversations on how to grow a lifestyle that's pretty rich in love, beauty, wellness, and financial wealth. I'm Sheila Bella, beauty business coach, celebrity brow artist, global success speaker, author, serial entrepreneur, wife, mother, friend, daughter, and your forever positive beauty biz sales guru. Let's go. You guys. Not only is today going to be a great episode, but there's going to be a pretty epic announcement happening in 2 seconds right now. I am so excited to announce to you Pretty Ambitious Summit, a 3-day transformative live event that is going to change the way you do business and the way you do life. Pretty Ambitious Summit is going to be epic. I plan on having speakers there that are going to blow your mind. I want you guys to develop the confidence that you've never had before. Develop the relationships you've always wanted with entrepreneurial minds. This is not a weekend of small talk. This is a weekend where we're going to get real, dive deep into our souls, harness our bravery, and learn on top of that all of the strategies that I myself have used to build my own business and the business of others. If you want complete life mastery, business mastery, relationship mastery, you have to come to the Pretty Ambitious Summit. It is a 3-day transformative event with soul, strategy, and sisterhood. Tickets are not on sale yet, but if you want to get on the wait list, get on it right now, because people on the wait list are going to get preferred pricing. This event is going to be in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica, right by the beach. And it's going to be next year, beginning of next year, 2020, 3-day transformative weekend where we're all going to link arms and be best friends. Get ready, sister. Go to SheilaBella.com/Pretty Ambitious Summit to get on the wait list, or if you want more information. And I cannot wait to make you guys feel as good as I do. And I get to do that live in person. I'm going to have details very, very soon. But for now, that's all I can give you. Again, SheilaBella.com/Pretty Ambitious Summit. And now back to my guest, Stefanos Sifandos. You have to check out his Instagram. It's Stefanos Sifandos. And I'm going to put the link in the show notes, as I always do. He is deeply immersed in men's empowerment work. He also works with females, but his understanding of the male psyche is what I find so interesting. His content is just life quality enhancing. How did he get here? So we're going to dive into that. After struggling immensely most of his life with fear around freedom and commitment, delving deep into and shifting his own pain and shadows, Stefanos has now found incredible freedom through commitment to his own path, love, his service, his beautiful fiancée, and his inspired, driven life. And it is his mission to help you reconnect with your truth and empower you to create the abundant life that you deserve. Check him out now, Stefanos Sifandos. So for our listeners who are not familiar with you yet, I can't wait for them to. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yes, of course. So I spend my time, I observe, I'm a witness to, I research, I'm just fascinated and fanatical about relationships. So that means our relationship to ideas, to ourselves, to constructs, to our models of reality, to beliefs, to our past, our present, our future, our relationship to people, to romance, to our sexuality, to our expression in the world, to our purpose or purposes for being here. And how do we enhance and evolve the quality of those relationships so that there's a clear conduit between what our needs are and what we want and who we wish to be in the world, and then how we're acting.
Mm.
And then further to that, I love how that plays out in masculine, feminine dynamics. And so if we just take men, for example, I spend a lot of time, I work with men and women, but really when I'm looking at men is what does it mean to be a healthy masculine man in contemporary times, and what role does that play in the ever-evolving nature of relationships in today's world? What does that look like? What role does the feminine play? And that remember, the masculine and feminine expression is not limited to men or women. It resides in all sentient beings. It's the polarity of expression that we both hold. It's two sides of the same coin per se. And then for men particularly, because I do spend a lot of time in that space, is how can men hold a very strong masculine posture, and what impact can that have on themselves, the world, and their relationships?
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into that. I have so many questions about that. But I have just a couple warm-up questions, although we get deep in this podcast pretty darn quickly. That's
I
been
love
true for all my guests. I'm allergic to small talk. Tell us 3 truths about life that you know are certain. Is there anything?
Oh, there's plenty. I've got to condense 3.
All right, just
That's a
all right.
really great question.
Yeah.
If we are not willing, and that alone, that word, that standalone word, willing. If we're not willing, we'll never receive.
Mm.
And that's for me personally, and for what I witness in the world, that's a massive truth. Is when we're unwilling to traverse the unknown, when we're unwilling to look at our stuff, when we're unwilling to take a risk, when we're unwilling to be humble, when we're just unwilling to do what we need to do and be who we need to be and what we need to be in order to live the life of truth and embodiment and authenticity that we wish. If we're unwilling to do that, we'll be in consistent misalignment of truth, of self, essentially. That's one massive truth that I've learned the hard way. Hard way.
Absolutely.
Another truth is that any relationship and every relationship requires a number of different elements of self to be involved. But if there's no effort, there's no relationship. It's a fallacy to think that there's going to be an easy ride in any relationship. That's not to say it can't be seamless, and it can't be congruent, and it can't be in alignment, and it can't be aligned in values. But to think it's always going to be easy, it's just a fallacy. So effort is required in every relationship. And whilst we're on the theme of relationships, another major point around relationships and how we relate to the world and how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to others. If we show up in that relationship in lie and not truth, the relationship is doomed.
Mm.
And that in and of itself is a massive truth.
Authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so simple yet so true.
And powerful. It is simple, and it can be so powerful if we really apply ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Everyone talks about success hacks, right?
Mm.
Like, oh, do you have a success hack? What
Mm.
about a failure hack? How do you bounce back from it?
For me, the first way, that's another great question. The first way for me to bounce back from a failure, or a quote unquote failure, is
Mhm.
to embrace the failure and
Mm.
see it as something as valuable. So have an underlying belief system that failure is feedback. That failure can actually give you something, feedback into how you've been,
Mm.
into the action that you took, into the choices that you made, and how can you make different choices moving forward. What can you learn from that failure? And if we have a belief system or a model of failure that tells us failure is a result of us not being worthy, or us not being enough, or us carrying shame around the decisions that we made, and that we should have known better, and that we should have made better decisions, that will keep us in this cycle of despair, and this cycle of shame and guilt, and this cycle of being focused more on what we didn't do than what we actually can do to learn and grow from that.
Mm.
As beings in this world, as individuals and people in this world, all we want to do is grow.
Mhm.
It's a prime directive for every single one of us to expand ourselves and grow, to learn more, to be more, to go deeper into self, to move beyond the level of awareness that we are at the moment into something that's newer, something that's into the unknown, basically. So we make the unknown known. If we don't embrace failure, we can't do that.
Mm.
Failure is a natural part of life. It's
Mm.
it's how we learn and how we grow. It's how we connect. It's how
Mm.
we get closer to our objectives or our dreams. It's how we live more authentically.
Yeah.
So many people, failure is so tarnished in our society, and
Mhm.
it's treated as if something that is a hindrance. But failure can be so empowering and so powerful if it's viewed in the right way. So it's all about the mindset we have around failure and the way our perspective on failure.
Yeah. I love what you said. Failure is feedback. And I
Mm,
agree with you. It's all about how you react to it. It's the
mm,
reaction
mm.
that you can control that
Yeah,
determines
yeah.
everything.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we turn our reactions, instead of our reactions coming from unconscious wounding or unconscious habitual pain points, we can turn our failure into fuel. And it's fuel for learning. It's fuel for how can I do this better? How can I learn from this and maximize the next steps that I take? And failure can be very powerful for that. And it's not the only way to learn, but it's one way to learn. And failure is inevitable. And that's always going to happen in life. Like, we're going to set a task for ourselves and not quite meet it. Not going to happen all the time, but it's going to happen at least once in our lives.
Mm.
And so if we can meet that with an openness instead of a rigidity, that's power.
Any failures, personal failures come to mind that you've learned from?
Many.
One you'd like to share with our
Yeah,
audience?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can talk to business failures, and I can talk to relationship
Mm.
failures.
Mm.
I'll talk to one of each briefly. And so
Okay.
I spent most of my life going from business to business, business to business, this build burn mentality around businesses. I'd be really successful 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 7 months, whatever it may be. And then I'd be just plummeting. I would make no money, or I'd be in deficit following months, and just up, down, start, stop approach that I had. And what happened was I didn't take responsibility for what I was being and who I was
Mm.
in those businesses, and what I could have been doing better, or what I could have been doing more efficiently, proficiently, what I could have been doing differently. Instead, what I chose to focus on was surviving, and not focusing on the patterns that were actually unraveling
Mm.
within my actions and within the business. And so they became longer term failures because I couldn't learn from them
Mm.
in the short term.
Ah,
And those businesses plummeted
yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
And some of those businesses were amazing businesses. And as an example, one was medical cannabis and industrial hemp.
Mhm.
And this was a few years ago when it was at the precipice of really bringing that to the world. Another one was because I was in the entrepreneurial space for some time. It was a fuel conversion technology. It was basically converting um, coal fumes and waste into recycled energy. But again, I mean, the people I was surrounding myself with and how I was behaving, we weren't focused on what are the benefits of what we're doing, or the benefits of the failures that we're engaging in, and how can we make a difference with respect to the action that we're taking? How can we take a different course? And there were some failures in business, for example, and there's many more, of course. In relationships, it was habituated behavior coming from wounding. And so an example of that was I was in a relationship many years ago, and I was so unfaithful in that relationship, and I was distracting myself from the relationship and from myself. And it was around the same time that my businesses were failing as well, right? Everything goes hand in hand. It works in parallel.
Mm-hmm.
And again, instead of looking at my patterns, I would make excuses for myself, saying, "Oh, this is normal. This is, people do this. What someone else doesn't know can't hurt them. This, it's normal for men to do this." And this is really where my journey around masculinity and being in healthy relationships stemmed from.
Mm-hmm.
And I started looking at that, and I did that for years, and that was a massive failure and learning opportunity, but a failure in my end because I was so out of integrity, and I wasn't really looking at what I could be doing to be a more profound version, a more authentic version of myself until much later, of course. But at that point, it became very painful and very intense.
Wow. Yeah, I'm really curious too how you got here, and I think you answered that question a little bit, because a lot of men, I believe, are not into self-development. They don't want to look in. And so I'm curious as to what got you here. So, truth be told, my husband wasn't really into therapy and personal development and looking inwards until we got married. But when I first met him, he wasn't as interested, and now we are fully immersed, maybe too immersed. But yeah, what made that switch for you? What turned that switch on? And I think you answered a little bit of it. And also, like, for gosh, this is a double question for females out there who may be dragging their men into the self-development world. What advice would you have for them? So, yeah, kind of let us in on your process. How are you like this? What makes you different?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second question. I'll go into the second question first briefly, and then I'll actually come back to it.
Okay.
My beloved Christine and I actually did a podcast on her podcast a couple of weeks ago on how do you get your man into personal growth and personal development. And that was really insightful to have that conversation with Christine in that capacity. And so for me, I've always been, and when I say always, I literally mean since I was a young child, because of my mother, I was involved in personal growth and personal awareness expansion. Whilst I grew up in a very volatile environment, physically violent, emotionally abusive, volatile environment, my mother was very open to new ways of being in the world and expressions of spirituality and connectedness. And so I was exposed to growth from a young age. And so that was the norm for me. Where my disconnect was that I experienced so much pain and trauma as a child, and I suppressed a lot of that. And I brought that suppression and that shadow self into my relationships as an adult. That's the sort of short of it. And so I would keep playing out these patterns that were linked to my childhood trauma, and I couldn't figure out why. And I didn't bother looking deeper into it, even though I was so much into personal growth. I just couldn't see the forest through the trees within my own self. And I was unwilling to look at that stuff because it was too painful, until it became too painful to not look at it. And that relationship that I mentioned earlier, that was the catalyst for me a number of years ago. That was the catalyst for me to go into my stuff fully, in a fully committed way, and really go deep into that. And then from there, that opening in me, that opening of my heart, my body, my mind, and my soul, my spirituality, my connectedness to what it was I wanted to truly be in the world and to other people. When that opened, when that channel opened within me, then I became I moved into greater integrity with how I was expressing in the world, and it became very real. And my whole life changed from then, Sheila. Honestly, my businesses became consistent. My service was clear. The way I showed up was clear. My energy was clear. I did a lot of work though to clear a lot of old stuff and quote unquote ugly stuff. and just energetics within me, within my physiology, within my mental landscape and my emotional being that was just not congruent.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a very painful time in my life, but it really inspired me to be a more congruent person and who I am today and how I wish to continue to grow and evolve today as well. And to come back to your second question around how does for the ladies out there, how do they get their men into personal growth?
Right. And
It's
it sounds like you had to hit rock bottom in
yes.
order
Oh yeah.
to have to, but I mean,
Yes, I did. Yeah, several times, and I was dragged across the rock face of rock bottom as well,
wow.
which was interesting. Yeah,
So it had to hurt.
several times. Oh yeah, yeah, it really did. It really, it had to hurt. For
Does it
me, it had to hurt
always
a
have
lot.
to hurt though? You
That's
know?
a great question. I get asked that often, and so the way I answer this is yes and no. And I'll tell you the yes and I'll tell you the no. No, it doesn't need to be like that. Yes, it needs to be like that because of where the collective consciousness is, the collective state of awareness in humanity, where we are today. And unfortunately, we learn by such sharp contrast. As we develop as a species, intuitively, mentally, relationally, socially, technologically, all of that, the sharpness of contrast can diminish a little bit, and more, should I say. So hitting rock bottom doesn't have to be as intense, and we can learn more indirectly. We haven't quite mastered the art of learning indirectly yet. So for example, I can sit here and I can say to another man, hey man, I've been where you're at. I really suggest you stop doing what you're doing, because if you continue, this is what you may experience. Duh, 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 duh. And he can say, oh, wow, I really feel that. But he doesn't really feel it until he's felt it himself, i.e. direct experience. So where we are as a collective, we really thrive on learning from direct experience. And we haven't quite mastered the indirect experience. In other words, someone saying, hey, don't cross that bridge because it's rickety. And you're like, it doesn't look rickety to me. I'm going to cross it. And so we haven't quite mastered that. So yes, pain is not the only way to learn. There are many ways to learn. And so what happens is with every individual is we go through intensity and pain, and we either do one of two things. We either keep repeating that because we're addicted to that pain and we're addicted to our issues and we're addicted to the habituation and the neurology and behaviors of what we're being.
It's comfortable.
It's comfortable.
Yeah.
Or we say, no, I'm not doing this anymore, and we make a change. And then we don't need to learn by such intense pain. And that was my path. I was keep pain, intensity. And then the intensity dropped because I chose consciously to not learn like that anymore and learn in other ways, learn in a wise and embodied way. And so to come back to your original question around how does a woman help her man get into personal growth?
Yes.
That's a tough one. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, men want, I mean, I'm generalizing, but that's not always true. But men like to feel capable. They don't like to ask for help typically.
Yeah.
So,
It's a strong masculine trait in its unhealthy form. It's quite vicious, in fact, and it's highly separate and isolating and individualized, and it becomes an internalized, shameful process for men.
right. So what do you do? How do you?
So lead by example and inspire, and so it's all in the language and the communication. So the first step would be, if there's something that you're really passionate, I'm speaking to the ladies here, if it's something that you're really passionate about and inspired by, and let's just say something, it's really simple, something like yoga. Okay, yoga has become very popular in the last decade, and it's something that's very mainstream. And let's just say it's yoga, and you'd want to start and I'm giving you an example. If a man is way off the spiritual path or way off the path of being interested in personal growth and development, the way that you could approach him would be as follows. Darling, I'm really loving this yoga that I'm doing. I've been doing it for a number of weeks or months now. and I'm enjoying it so much, and it's helping me feel X, Y, and Z. I feel freer in my body. I feel like there's less pain in my body. You want to make it visceral and tangible because men like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's simple, right? And I just feel lighter in my mind. I'd love for you to do a session with me. I can get you a free pass if it's something that you're interested in. It would mean a lot to me if you would be able to come with me. And I'd just love to share this experience with you, and maybe it would be something that we could do together.
Mm-hmm.
And if you come from that place, chances are that your man's going to really be interested in that.
Mm.
At least to, at worst case scenario, to appease you. But he may actually enjoy it. Another way is to just be the change that you're experiencing in the practices that you're engaging in. Be the changes that you're experiencing in the practices that you're engaging in.
Mm-hmm.
And he can see that in you.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you talk about it is not in a shameful way, or it's not in a way that is suppressing, or in a way that minimizes him for not doing the work, quote unquote, the work, but is more just in an uplifted, inspired way. And then speak his values and speak his language. And so I'm not talking about whether it's English or German, French, Japanese. I'm talking about his cultural values and what is he interested in, and then align with that and come from a place of doing things together, being in that space together, learning together, spending time together, bonding and being intimate together. And that it's important to you. Now, of course, you may keep hitting a roadblock with this, and he's just reluctant and reluctant and reluctant. Then you have to make a decision as an individual. Does this man align with my values? Now, he may bring other gifts and other values to the table, to the relationship. And if that's the case, then great. And if you're not distancing emotionally and spiritually and relationally just because he's not involved in personal growth, which I doubt would happen, if you're really deep into personal development and he's not, there will be distance there.
Definitely.
And then you have to make a choice and be self-honoring. You really have to take responsibility for who you want to be in the world and what type of relationship you want. And you may have to make some hard decisions. But again, before we even get to that point, because I'm jumping ahead a little bit now, is just come from a place of wanting to spend time together, not forcing the personal growth down his throat, not saying that he's not good enough or implying that he's not good enough. And if he doesn't do it, and be mindful around, let's say you have an argument around commitment the night before, and then the next day you publicly tag him on a Facebook post around commitment. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Please don't do that. That's all you're going to do is distance him further from you and from him ever engaging in personal growth. And we're going to understand that, when we look at this realistically, men have actually been in the personal growth space since the beginning of time. When we look at all the major philosophies of life, Eastern and Western, they were largely occupied by the masculine and by men. And so it's we've in this modern, and this is such a complex conversation.
Yeah.
But in contemporary times, there are a number of reasons why men have part of that is socioeconomic, part of that is gender politics, that we've lost touch with that ability to engage in deeper levels of inquiry, cosmic inquiry into consciousness, inquiry into our own state of being. Some of the greatest philosophers of our time, women, of course, as well,
yes,
and they have been men.
Yeah,
so we've lost, absolutely. Yes. So we've lost touch with that, but we are that paradigm is shifting as well.
Right, I think it's starting to, definitely. Yeah. Well, thank you. I definitely that's challenging. What you suggested, bringing up what inspires you to your man without guilt, without sarcasm, without any aggression. So it is challenging, especially for women who are feeling alone out there because they can't share what they're most passionate about with their partners. I can imagine that must be very painful.
Yeah.
So, which brings me to my next question, because I just took a look at your page and I was just loving everything. I felt like I clicked on 53 photos or something like that. Your content is so interesting, and you have some really beautiful and deep ideas about the role men should have supporting their female counterparts. And as we have a lot of entrepreneurial women who listen to the show, it's unfortunate that society has put a lot of expectation on men to be the breadwinner in their family. What do you think the role of a modern man is now as a protector and provider now in 2019? Like, is it financial? I make more money than my husband. We talk about it all the time.
Mm.
And if it isn't financial, what are other ways that perhaps a man who might be feeling insecure, that he makes less money than his wife or his partner, what are other ways he can provide? Is that currency always financial? And yeah, how does a couple deal with that?
Again, a very complex issue. The currency is
Very.
definitely not, yeah, it's definitely not always financial.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Agree.
currency is definitely not always financial.
Agree. Mm-hmm.
The meaning that we attach to the symbol of currency in today's world by most of us is it's deeply rooted in safety. It's deeply rooted in quote unquote protection.
Yes.
I have a love hate relationship with this word protection. I'm a
Mm.
big fan of it because, and at the same time, I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit weary of it. Because, and I'll tell you why. I was having this conversation with a dear friend of mine, Aaron, and we were talking about protection, and he said protection in many what was the word I want to look for here? I suppose in many paradigms or
Mhm.
in many different expressions of life,
Yeah.
protection implies that we're coming from a deficit. We're coming from a place of fear.
Oh, we're
And
already coming from a deficit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're
Okay.
coming from this rigid, restricted, fearful place, and that's why we have to protect what is ours. And so, whilst I definitely agree with that, and I think we can become hyper protective in our world,
Okay.
and we become very self-absorbed. Protection definitely is the realm of the masculine, and again, masculine, feminine resides in both in all people and all sentience. It's just two
Yes.
sides of the same coin.
Understood.
And so yeah, and so
We
protection
got
is
it.
definitely yeah, it's definitely a masculine quality,
Yeah.
and it's needed. It's part of our nature, for lack of a better term. It's part of how we've evolved,
Mhm.
and it's about can we be readily available to protect if we need to, as opposed to continuously being in this state of protection, which implies that we're continuously in this underlying place of fear. So I just wanted to make mention of that protect and provide. But let's go to providing for a moment.
Yeah.
This is a good opportunity, a healthy opportunity for women in the audience to ask themselves, how do I want to be provided for?
Mhm.
And almost take a moment, pause the podcast for a second, and ask yourself really deeply, how do I wish to be provided for? What does that look like for me when I'm being? And of course, there's a providing that must take place within oneself, and
Yes.
that's very healthy for that to occur because then we get a reference point of how we want to be provided for as well.
Yes.
And this fallacy of I'm an individual. I don't need anyone to look after me. It's a load of shit. It doesn't work like
Mm.
that in any capacity. It's not true. We're pro-social relational beings. We're cooperative beings. We've evolved in tribe. We've evolved with people in our
Mhm.
lives, and we've evolved with relying on people, being self-reliant, and also supporting other people. And so there's nothing wrong with a woman or a man even asking, "How can my needs be met right now? And
Mm.
what are my needs? And how can
Mhm.
someone provide for me?" And so asking that question is very powerful because not all women will say, I want to be provided for financially. Again, the symbolism and the meaning of money in today's world is one of protection. We're going to use that word. One of safety, stability, security, and groundedness. And so there are other ways that men can show up. When men show up consistently in their behavior, when they show up and they're predictable in their behavior, they're not volatile and unpredictable, they're safe and they're secure and they're providing an emotional stability outside of that individual, that woman in this case.
Yeah.
And that I know for a fact that is worth so much to so many people.
Mhm.
Whether you're a man or a woman, that's irrelevant. When my beloved meets me with compassion and non-judgment, and she consistently meets me with compassion and non-judgment, I feel that my emotional needs in a relational dynamic are met and I'm provided for.
Mhm.
And so with a man, when a man shows up and he's not volatile and he's very clear in his direction in life and he has clarity in his purpose per se, and he is open in his posture. He's not hiding from the woman in his life, and
Mhm.
he's certain with the action that he takes, and he's methodical with who he is, and he's consistent in his behavior and how he shows up, and he's got dreams and he's got vision and he understands himself and he's on a path and a journey of expansion and he's willing, come back to that word
Willing.
willingness.
Mm-hmm.
He's willing to do the work, he's willing to look at his stuff. That there, for me, is one of the best ways that a man can provide for his woman in
Mm.
that sense. One of the best ways.
Yeah, I
And there's
agree.
more. There's a lot more, of
There is a
course.
lot more.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. We are made to be relational creatures.
Yeah.
We need other people. That's how we've evolved. I just did a podcast, the last episode
Mm,
before this one, all about tribe,
mm,
all about that it's not things that make us happy. It's the things in between, which is relationship, that
mm.
makes us happy. And
Yeah.
how we punish criminals like rapists and thieves is through isolation,
Yeah.
separation
Yeah.
from others,
Yeah.
and it's torture. So
Yeah.
yes, from a biological cellular level, we need one another. We need relationship. Absolutely.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Okay, next question. What do you think the difference is, sorry, between male and female aggression? Do you think that we compete the same way? Because, I mean, personally, I think females compete through manipulation.
Mhm.
Generally, typically, not everybody. I hope that goes without saying. And men tend to compete physically. Or perhaps women compete through beauty. In
Mm,
some circles. I remember when in my more immature years, looking
mm,
at it that way, and it was so unhealthy, so
mm.
unhealthy. Yeah,
There
what are
is a
those?
difference between feminine and masculine aggression,
Mhm,
most definitely, and it comes out in the shadow elements of self. And I would say that the aggression or the uncontrolled rage or the uncontrolled anger or the anger that's coming from wounding in a core in a core feminine expression would be more emotive,
mm,
and in a masculine expression, it would be more physical. It would be more physically violent per se.
mhm,
But when we're speaking to the core essence of aggression itself, there's no real difference. It's coming from a wounded place. It's coming from a place of protection, and I fear and pain. So the pain body is so overwhelming that we have this need to outwardly project and protect ourselves,
mhm,
or run away. And that's a personal disposition. And so some people may become passive and really retract, and some people may become very outwardly aggressive and loud to protect themselves and physically violent and so forth, or shout and whatnot. Manipulation is definitely a dark shadow feminine trait,
mm.
but men can be manipulative as well,
True.
and it depends on their emotional core essence or their relational core essence. And if the relational core essence is feminine as a man, they'll be more manipulative.
Mhm,
If the core essence of a a person is in terms of the relational aspect is masculine and they're unhealthy in that expression in terms of how they argue or how they aggress in the world, they will be more loud, they'll be more overt, they'll scream, they'll shout, they'll be very direct and very abusive and very insulting as well. Whereas the feminine aggression is more, again, passive, manipulative, underground per se. It's not very overt. It's more covert.
mhm.
But essentially, it comes from the same place, and that is unchecked wounding and unchecked pain and fear.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Or maybe unfelt. They haven't
Oh,
taken.
definitely unfelt. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely unfelt for sure.
That's so important. It's so important
Mm.
to go down there, to go to the
Mm.
pits of your emotions, to go through the depths of your emotions, because I firmly believe that it's not about just feeling good. It's about feeling it all.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it. Yeah, because otherwise we're fractured, we're not whole. When we feel parts and we choose to feel parts because the other stuff is too painful or it's not attractive, we're fractured and fragmented in the world, and
Mm,
including in ourselves and our relationships.
agree.
Mm.
So, what should single female entrepreneurs look for in a partner? What would your advice be?
Let's say you had a sister, if you have a sister. I don't know if you have a sister.
Yeah, I don't have a sister. I
Okay.
mean, I have a sister-in-law, so my brother's wife.
Oh, yeah.
She's sort of an entrepreneur in her own right in some ways,
Yeah.
but she's married, so she's married to my
Okay.
brother.
Okay.
Um,
What should single female entrepreneurs look for in a partner?
so the first thing that just really leaps out at me very, very loudly
Mhm.
is one must identify who they are in the world. And I don't
First.
mean by their titles or their status.
Yeah.
That's part of course, and that's what I call a superficial identity. And by superficial, I don't mean less than. I just mean that it's a simpler identity. But who are you in the world, and who do you want to be in relationship?
Yeah.
That's the honest. I don't mean to answer your question with a question, but I do.
Right.
Is who do you want to be in relationship? Because who you want to be is going to determine what you need to look for
Mm.
in a man, and
Mm.
also what are you willing to. I have many female entrepreneurs that come to me and work with me, and they work 15, 16, 17 hours a day,
Mhm.
and they don't have space in their lives for an intimate romantic relationship.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I say to them is, what are you willing not to give up or even sacrifice, but who and what are you willing to be in order to attract what you deserve and what you really want? Because I can't envision any healthy man wanting to be with someone that is working 16, 17, 18 hours a day,
Yeah.
6, 7 days a week. Where's the time for the relationship to be nurtured, mature, and grow? We want everything, yet we won't jump into the polarity of what we need to be to magnetize the opposite of that so that we can feel safe and comfortable in that posture.
Yes.
And so, in other words, if we're being hyper feminine or hyper masculine,
Mhm.
we're going to attract the opposite of that. And so, when it comes to business and entrepreneurship, so many of us have to be in this hyper masculine
Right.
space. And so, at some point, this is the chief complaint I get. I either attract hypermasculine. An entrepreneurial woman. I either
Mhm.
attract hypermasculine men who just are too controlling
Mhm.
and they're too similar to me, and
Mhm.
I don't feel safe. I don't. It's fun for a while, but then it just doesn't work. There's so much volatility. Or I'm attracting hyper feminine men
Mhm.
who are somewhat opposite to me, but after a period of time again, it becomes awkward and it doesn't feel right. And I'm not able to just be and surrender in the relationship and he won't take lead and it just doesn't serve me. And I don't, so then she has to be
The
quote
masculine.
unquote masculine
Yes.
in her business and
Yes.
masculine in her relationship, and it doesn't work.
Yes.
And it's unfair and it doesn't, and there's something about that isn't just not healthy long term, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, doing in the world, producing, creating in this sense, business, these are masculine traits of the realm of the masculine. And again, this isn't a wrong or right thing. What
Mhm.
happens is if we're too much of anything in our world,
Yeah.
we're imbalanced and unhealthy, full stop. And so we have to find that balance of how do we want to show up in the various areas of life. And
Mm.
that still means you can be a go-getter and you can be a doer and you can be really focused in your business.
Mhm.
And then in your relationship, how do you wish to show up? Because that will determine how you wish to be treated, which will determine what type of man you will magnetize into your life.
Wow. Yeah, everything you said is so true. I see the problem.
Yeah.
I see the problem. And it does start with self awareness. Knowing who you
Yep.
are is
Yep.
so important. Like,
Yeah.
how do you
And
know?
owning what we want,
Oh,
really
it's
owning what we want. That's a big thing for people. We're embarrassed or we're scared that we're
right.
going to be rejected with owning what we want,
Mhm.
like owning what we really want to be in the
Mhm.
world and taking responsibility for that. It's
Yeah.
a pain point for so many of us.
Yeah.
And if we don't, we're selling ourselves so short, so short.
Yeah. Being unapologetic about
Yep.
what your needs are, no matter how
Yep.
crazy or whatever you think they may be.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
So,
mm.
so single female entrepreneurs need to
Yep.
start with need to start with knowing who they are,
Knowing what they want as
knowing what
well.
they want, owning what
Yeah.
they want, and
Yes.
then and also I'm just trying to simplify everything, and also um, finding a man, I suppose, that meets those needs.
Mm,
And I guess like it always comes with a choice. It comes with sacrifice. You know,
Mm.
I work that much. And I'm
Yeah.
married and I have 2 kids,
Yeah.
you know, and the balance is so difficult. I think balance is like perfect balance is such a myth. It's always a
Of
choice.
course it is.
You know,
Yeah.
I just got back from a
Effort.
long effort. Thank you.
Mhm.
I just got back from a long business trip, and so I'm taking like a few days to just really reconnect with my family because relationship is the fuel. Relationship is my fuel. I can't go on
Mm.
without it. So
Yeah.
I can't work without it. And that's really what I draw from. And this balance is just never ending. Even
Mm.
if you're entrepreneurial, even after you get married and you have the kids, you're still playing that game.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't feel that. I'm going to be really clear on something. No woman should stop being entrepreneurial if that's part of what deeply inspires her in any capacity. It's just getting really clear on what type of relationship she wants and
Mhm.
what type of man she wants by getting clear on what she wants for herself and who she wants to be in relationship, because then that will determine again what type of man she can attract into her life to serve her in that way, and vice versa, of course.
Right. You seem to understand these two polar problems very well because the two scenarios you laid out are very
Mm,
clear to me. I know them both
mm,
personally and I know
mm,
friends who are entrepreneurial
mm,
who have these issues when they're dating. Yeah, it's never the perfect balance. It's either too much or too little,
mm, mm.
you know? So yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. So
It is, but it's very possible. You're right. It's very tough, and it's very possible still.
yes.
It's yes, it's challenging and it's possible, and it means making some lifestyle changes, maybe some perceptive changes, some shifts within oneself, and also getting excited about, wow, I get to be different people in the world. I get to be different expressions of me, and that's not being false or being inauthentic. It's just showing up how you want to show up in different relational dynamics to help you live the most authentic life possible. And there's
Mm,
something to be said about women stepping into um, a very beautiful feminine energy and men stepping into a very healthy masculine energy,
mhm.
and then playing that out in relationship. And
Yes.
again, there's so many characteristics and expressive states that come with that, and it's a learning process, and if we're open to it, we can have amazing relationships and still be kick-ass business leaders, entrepreneurs, service providers, in terms of, I don't mean like telecommunication service providers, I mean providing service from the heart to the world, you know.
Yeah, yeah, it is possible, and I'm living proof of
Mm,
that, but it's not easy.
yeah,
It's always
yeah,
challenging, but yes, it is
yes.
possible.
Mm.
So, what should women do? What should women do to satisfy the deserving, dedicated, hardworking men in their lives?
Oh, what a beautiful question.
Yeah, I
No,
have one. What do I do?
yeah,
What do I do,
yeah,
Steph?
yeah. Well, I'm gonna honestly gonna come back to. So the question is, how can women nurture their men,
Yeah.
essentially? Yeah, yeah.
Mhm,
I'm going to honestly come back to compassion and non-judgment. That has been everything for me. That
really.
honestly, that's been that to some extent, that's been a massive contributor. And
Mhm.
I don't say this lightly. That it's literally saved my life. I mean,
Mm,
physically, like, I was on the verge of suicide many different
wow.
times. Um, uh, just because of the depths that I was traversing and
Mhm,
what I was going through and choosing to observe within myself to equilibrate and move through and move beyond. And so it was empowering to be met by the feminine, by by beautiful feminine women with nurture,
mhm.
with compassion and non-judgment.
That's our
Additionally,
superpower. Sorry to
it
interrupt.
is, it
Yeah,
is, it's a feminine superpower. It
yeah,
is.
and
Yeah.
nurture, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and beyond that is find out what your man's love language is,
Mhm,
find out what his erotic blueprint is, find out what his sexual needs are. And when I say sexual needs, let me be very specific on something. I'm talking about the way he sexually projects, his personality,
mhm,
his sexual life, his life force. Full stop. It's beyond just the act of movement and sexual intercourse. That's part of it, but that's actually a small part of it.
mhm,
I'm talking about the full essence of who he is. Find out what makes him shine, what inspires him, and then be that for him if that aligns with your values, of course, as
Mhm,
well. And
mhm,
that's part of the learning and the growing process to get in togetherness, right?
mhm, mhm,
But find out what makes him tick, what inspires him, what he thrives on, and be that together.
mhm,
And also one of the deepest ways a woman can nurture her man or
mhm,
be there for her man
mhm,
is to know what his suffering has been and not trigger that. In other words, and that comes down to the woman doing her own work, the
mm,
woman doing her own personal growth work and stepping into that place of power, and then not being triggered by his stuff that may come up when he's under tension. So there's not two reactive people going at it, but rather someone's reactive and the other's responsive. And then he can become and you're feeding each other. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful place to be,
mm.
because then you're growing together and you're moving beyond your unconscious fears and your traumas and your pain points and your habitual childhood patterns that no longer play a role in your adult lives. That's another way
Mm.
that a woman can deeply, people can serve each other, but a woman can serve a man.
Wow. That lasts.
Mm,
That lasts. That's not just a
mm,
favor, but yeah, I think just
mm-mm,
really knowing your man and
mm.
serving him in the
Knowing what he wants, yeah.
yeah, serving him in the most
Does he like the NBA? Buy him an NBA ticket. You know, go with him or do it with his friends. Or
yeah.
does he love getting his feet rubbed? So I'm giving you some simple examples now.
Yes.
Then rub his feet and it just that's just simple and it's beautiful. You
Yes.
know? And when we take action in relationship and we serve the other and we give without the expectation of what are they going to do for me,
Mm.
that attitude in and of itself is so deeply empowering.
It's empowering and oddly
Mm.
it's satisfying
Deeply, deeply.
for the giver actually.
Yes.
Yeah, if you find the joy in that. Absolutely.
Mm.
Oh my goodness. What? It's already been almost an hour. Time just
Yes, it has.
flew. Time just flew. So we're getting towards the last few questions. As you know, the title of this podcast is the Pretty Rich Podcast.
Yes.
We have a lot of beauty entrepreneurs who are listening.
Mm.
That's the title. But also, I talk about richness as the full spectrum of wealth and well-being, richness in relationships, in health, also financial. So, what is your best advice for how to live a pretty rich life as a whole?
Mm. Feel, experience, and truly see the value in everything that comes across you, in every experience you have, in every interaction,
Mm,
in every relationship, in every business venture, in every decision. Truly feel and see the value that all of that brings. And that's deep fulfillment and meaning and richness in life experience, which lays a foundation for happiness,
mm,
which essentially happiness is the gateway to feeling wealth and abundance and
mm.
feeling richness in one's life.
You are incredible, sir. That was so beautiful. And I am a
Thank you.
big advocate for aiming for meaning in
Yeah,
everything, creating
yeah,
meaning, finding meaning
yeah. Substance.
in every experience, every relationship, every opportunity,
Mm,
even a job you hate, find the meaning in it
mm,
and it automatically lifts you. So that's
mm,
so in line with everything I stand for. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
mm.
your time.
Thank you.
So, where can we find you and how can we work with you?
Thank you. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook,
Mhm.
Stefanos Safandos, or LinkedIn, or any of the social media outlets, of
Great.
course. And my website.
I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Thank you, thank you. And my website's stefanossafandos.com and reclaimyourkingdom.com.
Amazing. And you work with both men as well as women, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Men, women, couples. Yep,
That's
definitely.
awesome. So like, do you can we like send our husbands to you or something?
As long as you do it in a way.
Aw.
Yeah, I definitely work. I do a lot of work with men and women. Honestly, my one-on-one clientele, I have more women. Just slightly more women, and the group work that I do, because at the moment I'm focused more on men.
Yes.
But Christine and I actually are running a few one-day events this year, and that's open for everyone, and that's on relationships and love and mastery and self and in relationships.
Oh, that's
So
great.
yeah,
When is
yeah.
that?
August, LA, London, October, and San Diego, November.
Okay, and where can we find information for that?
That will be both on christinehassler.com and stephanosophandos.com. Yeah.
You guys, by the way, Christine Hassler is one of my favorite podcasts.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna link that too in the show.
Oh, it's so lovely of you, Sheila. It's so
Yeah,
lovely.
tell her I want to have her on the show.
I will tell her, absolutely. I'll let her know for sure.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Stephanos. I really,
Thank
really,
you.
really appreciate your time. And until next time, be well, you guys.
As I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. It is an honor to be a part of your life. If you enjoyed this podcast or were impacted by this at all, please take a minute to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and share it with a friend. Screenshot it, post it on your stories, your feed, your timeline, and don't forget to tag me. I would really love to see that. My Instagram is @RealSheilaBella. Also, let's carry on the conversation longer. Join our private Facebook group just for Pretty Rich Girls. Just go to facebook.com/Pretty Rich Squad and check out SheilaBella.com for more information on how to get more support on your beauty entrepreneurship journey and get going on your pretty rich lifestyle. Until next time.